So this is the first episode we're going to do. I think we're going to do about one episode a week. We're going to do one episode a week.
Maybe more. We'll see.
Well, one episode a week, and we'll upload it to our YouTube, which is VIC and LILI. That's for now.
Yes.
That's for now. We'll probably end up changing it. But that, and we'll also upload it onto our Instagram, just to see how it goes, because we want to get the flow of this and how we're going to make this work. But for this first episode, we wanted to... Well, actually, I wanted to talk to you about how... Because you just came out with a story that you worked with the Latino USA.
Yep.
And Maria Hinojosa. You just worked with a project. It's called...
Shout out to her.
It's called From Chicago to Oaxaca. And what that is, it's a story about an indigenous family coming out from your whole family, basically, because you are from Oaxaca. What was the pueblo called?
Teotitlán del Valle.
She is an indigenous Zapoteco town in Mexico. And what her experience is basically is how her family was dealing with COVID. So what I wanted to ask you is, how did this whole thing come about? Like, how did you come up with this idea? Was it presented to you, or did you come up with it, or how did it come up?
Well, I've been a writer for a while, ever since I was a kid, right? So writing poetry and stuff like that, and scribbling down on notebooks and whatnot. And so I never had the urge to write. Well, I did have the urge, but I never had like the, ¿cómo se dice? Like the push to do it. Entonces, I'm a perfectionist, as you already know. Entonces, I always said in my head, like, when I write something, I want it to be perfect. And I think that kind of sucked, because then there became a point where I was like, no, pues, how am I going to write something if it's not perfect? Entonces, me paraba. Like, I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't write. And then all of a sudden, everything started happening with COVID. You know, I came back from New York, because I was out in New York for work. And when I came back, I thought everything was good. I was safe. And I was like, all right, like, we did it. We're home. We're together with the family. You know, everything's okay. And then all of a sudden, COVID started getting closer and closer and closer. And then you hear a friend has it, you know, or a coworker had it. My boss, had it.
I remember, because we went out to visit you out in New York, and we were literally there. One of the country closed down. It closed down on, I think, mid-March, I think, around there.
It was like the 14th, I think, the 15th.
14, 15. I remember that. We went out there, and then all of a sudden, my job texted me like, hey, we're going remote and all that, because I was working at a school district. And like, hey, no more school right now, we're going. And I'm like, hell yeah. So exactly. We closed down, and then I remember we were out there that weekend when we were out there, because we went Thursday through Sunday. That weekend, they basically said everywhere we were going, where there was the Rockefeller Center. We went
Rockefeller Center.
We went there. Then we went to go stay on a boat to go see the ferry and all that, and Statue of Liberty. Everything was closing down that weekend, so it was like
every
perfect
single
timing.
day things were closing. Like every day, oh, this is closed. Oh, that's closed now.
It was perfect timing. It was perfect timing. I remember that. And then when we left, that's when everything was going. Like, we didn't know what was going to happen, because I thought I was going to have to drive back, because I thought the plane was going to be canceled.
Yeah. Yep.
How did you, when you were out there? What started happening, though? Because I remember you were panic was starting to happen. So what happened with you and your family and your dad? Because your dad was in Mexico, wasn't he?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, my dad was in Mexico. So he was actually, when you and JC, one of my best friends, went to visit me in New York, my dad actually left to El Pueblo, right? Teotitlán del Valle, that same day. So he dropped you guys off in the airport, and then he went back later on, and then he flew to Mexico. So he was there for about a week. And he wasn't hearing anything that was happening in Mexico. And in El Pueblo, everybody was like, oh, we're okay. We're doing fine. There's nothing happening over here. And it's fake, like COVID is fake, whatever. So by the time he came back, there was a huge kind of like a worry that me and my mom were feeling. That's one of the reasons why I came home right away, because I was worried that he was going to get stuck in Mexico, because we were hearing about a lot of international flights being canceled and this and that. Entonces, by the time that he came back, I actually was already driving back home, and I decided to rent a car, and I was like, I'm out of here, man. I'm not sticking around here. Shit, screw that. Entonces, I rented a car out of New Jersey, y ya me fui. I grabbed all my stuff and I left. I grabbed 2 slices of pizza, a Coke from my favorite pizza place, said bye to the guy, and I left. Entonces, it was a 13-hour drive, and by the time I came home, I actually when I was going through Chicago, my mom texted me. She's like, hey, your dad's going to land in 20 minutes. Pick him up. And I'm like, oh, okay, perfect. I'm 10 minutes away from the airport. So it was like perfect timing. Anyways, I picked them up. And by the time we came home, we already had quarantined my grandparents. You know, everybody was already quarantining and stuff like that. Pero basically the worst case scenario happened. People from El Pueblo started to die of COVID. People that we knew, family members, like distant family members. And then we found out that my tios had it, my uncle, my aunt. And then that's kind of where that story begins in the podcast From Chicago to Oaxaca. So if you haven't heard it, go to Latino USA. You can find it on Instagram or on my page. It's on my bio too on my Instagram. And everywhere where podcasts are played, it's there. But it basically details the entire story of what happened, you know, when we found out, what steps were taken, and then basically how we kind of closed that chapter, you know, in our lives. And it's a tragedy, you know, for what happened and the loss of my tios. But I mean, a lot of people have gone through that, you know, right now, especially a lot of Latinos. COVID has affected so many Latino and Black communities. And it sucks because, you know, I mean, we're the people who have the most disease. Like, we are overweight, you know, we have diabetes. Like, there's a lot.
All the conchas.
All the conchas, yeah. We're not exactly healthy. Entonces, now that this virus came, it tends to attack us because of those health disparities and also because of our jobs. You know, a lot of Latino, you know, people work in different kinds of jobs, but that expose them a little more. So, yeah.
And I also wanted to ask you, how long did this whole thing take? Because I knew since we had from March, but like when it was presented to you, how long did this whole thing take to make, I guess? From the moment it's presented to you to the moment you finish, how long did it take?
We started with the idea back in June, I think. No, not June. Yeah, June. Before my tios passed away, I talked to my mentor, Maria Hinojosa. Shout out to her. I love you. But anyways, she is the founder and president of Futuro Media, who owns Latino USA and runs Latino USA. Entonces, I was chatting with her about what was happening with the Pueblo, and she told me, she goes, you know what, this is a story that needs to be told. And I said, perfect, but I'm going to tell it. And so we talked, and we were like, you know what, let's do this. And she's always been a huge champion of mine, always encouraging me to go out and like get things done. Entonces, without her, I always say, like, none of this would have existed. And then on top of that, I had my co-producer, Adriana. Shout out to her. She's amazing. My editor, Andrea. And also the managing person at Latino USA, who's Miguel, who's also like really smart when it comes down to, you know, making shows and things like that. Long story short, it probably took... We started working on it in June with another co-producer, Janice, who's also really great.
Did you have two co-producers, or is it just one?
She was a contributor. Okay. Like, she assisted me in the beginning. Yeah. But she actually had another job opportunity. So she went and she spread her wings and flew away. But I think from the moment that I came back from Mexico, because I ended up going to Mexico when we went to go bury my tios. From the moment I came back is when we actually started working. So I think the whole process took about 3 weeks.
Okay, damn. So you were like I remember you were on crunch time when I would talk to you, literally, because I'd go to work and then I'd come back and then I would still text you and then you'd say, yeah, I'm so busy, I'm still doing this, I still got to record this, I got to do that. I'm like, damn, well, that's a lot. I would have gone crazy for doing that.
Yeah, we tracked for about 6 hours the first time.
Didn't you say you pulled it all-nighter, I think?
Yeah, we tracked for 6 hours, so we started like at 4:30 p.m. Tracking just means that we recorded my voice and kind of like edited everything to how it was supposed to be said and stuff like that. And we didn't finish until 11:30 p.m. my time, 12:30 a.m. Adriana's time, my co-producers.
That's a lot. That's a lot of doing that. What about like the feedback? Like, what are the people that are like? Is it positive feedback? Have you heard it? Like, what are people saying about your whole project? All positive feedback.
All positive feedback, and there's been a lot of love, and I think just a lot of people have connected to the story, even though they haven't gone through exactly what my family may have gone through, but they went through their own version, you know, and so it's kind of like normalizing the feeling of losing somebody and the feeling of loss, because a lot of people do feel some type of way about this, you know, about their family members getting COVID. People don't believe that it's going to happen, and it's been happening. People lose their loved ones and stuff like that and haven't been able to grieve properly. So I've gotten a lot of amazing feedback from people who said, like, I couldn't stop crying from the moment that I was listening to it. And it reminded me of my family. And also, like, I've gotten a lot of Oaxaqueños and people from Zapotecos who are like, yeah, like, I heard my language. Like, that's awesome. And I'm like, hell yeah. So it's cool, like, connecting with them on that.
Well, now, so this project is done. Where can they find this project that you said?
Yeah, it's on Latino USA on Instagram. Also look it up on the internet. It's on there, latinousa.org. And then it's also on my Instagram page, which is Pescadita09, Pescadita09. And it's my bio, my link in my bio.
And then one last thing, so we can wrap this up. What is going forward now, what is your current projects, or if you're working on anything, and what do you plan on working on for the next upcoming weeks/months?
Well, I feel like the dam has been open, and now all of these creative things are flowing in my head, and I'm less scared to do them. So that's like a really interesting feeling that I've never really experienced. Maybe only a few times, right? So I'm working on 3 books.
Jesus. Nerd.
Simultaneously. So this is what I'm saying. Like everything just kind of like went, and I'm like, oh my God. Any writers out there, any creative person out there, probably experience this same thing where it's like you have things laying around that you just like wrote little things here and there, and now you find them again and you put them together and you're like, hey, this can be something. That's kind of what I'm going through right now. I'm like, oh man, I wrote about this, and here's a bunch of other things that I wrote about, and this can be something. So that, and then obviously growing our brand, Vive Tus Sueños. Shout out to Vive Tus Sueños, hashtag
BTS.
Vive Tus Sueños, BTS. That's right. Entonces growing our podcast and growing our online presence, and then working on another audio project, working on another radio project. Entonces this one's gonna be a surprise, so I won't say anything about it right now, but it is definitely very personal and touches a lot of people. So we'll see how that goes. I'm excited for the future, definitely.
And then one more time, where can they find you at? Your social media?
Yes, Instagram, Pescadita09, Facebook, Pescadita Ruiz, and Twitter, La Pescadita Ruiz.
Sweet. And then for me is El Mero Iniestra on Instagram. The same thing for Twitter. And then for YouTube, it's like we said, Vic and Lily.
Yeah.
Look us up, but we're probably going to end up changing it because that's too simple. But yeah.
Look up Victor Inestra and Lily Ruiz. That's how I found us. Like, I couldn't find us by the title.
The last name so we could find it. And this is the first of many shows, so we will keep this going. And then keep this up, or message us, DM us, or
comment
and everything. Let us know what else you guys want to hear, because I'm talking about this is our opening one. We also want to talk about some scary stories, experiences,
La Llorona,
that everything, because every Mexican has a Llorona story.
El Cucuy.
That politics, if you want, we can talk about movie reviews. We get to anything. Politics, just give us some ideas, because we'll be doing a lot more of these, and we're gonna need more content. So interviews, we'll get to that eventually, but. For now, this is our first one, so thank you very much.
And peace, chicken grease.
Oh my God.